The year is 1510. England cowers under the shadow of tyranny. The people remember the reign of Richard III. His cruelty still haunts them. Henry VII, the king who killed him at the Battle of Bosworth Field, seized the throne through bloodshed. He ruled with an iron fist. His methods, though effective, left a scar on the nation's soul. To consolidate his power, he eliminated potential rivals. Even powerful nobles were not safe. Henry VII understood the power of wealth. He replenished the royal coffers, often through ruthless means. Two figures, Richard Empson and Edmund Dudley, became instruments of his financial policies. They were tasked with enforcing the king's fiscal demands, feared and despised for their roles. Their methods were often considered unjust, and their ruthlessness earned them many enemies. When Henry VII died, his son, Henry VIII, ascended to the throne. The young king craved popularity. He wanted to distance himself from his father's harsh rule. What better way to appease the masses than to offer up scapegoats? Empson and Dudley were arrested. They were charged with treason and executed. Their deaths sent a clear message. A new era had begun. But how different would it truly be? Henry VIII, in the bloom of youth, radiated charisma and strength. His presence was magnetic, drawing admiration from all corners of his kingdom. He was not just a king, he was a symbol of hope and vitality for his people. He was a kingly figure, athletic and handsome. His people adored him. Whether he was hunting in the royal forests, jousting in grand tournaments, or engaging in other athletic pursuits, Henry embodied the ideal of a Renaissance monarch. His vigor and charm were unmatched, and his subjects took pride in their robust and dynamic king. But beneath the surface, a deep anxiety gnawed at him. Despite his outward confidence, Henry was haunted by the spectre of his own mortality and the future of his lineage. The weight of his responsibilities often left him in moments of deep contemplation and worry. He was obsessed with securing the Tudor dynasty. The thought of his family's legacy being cut short was unbearable. He spent countless hours studying his family tree, envisioning a future where his descendants would continue to rule England. He needed an heir, a son to inherit his throne. This was not just a personal desire, but a matter of national importance. A male heir would ensure the continuity of the Tudor line and bring stability to the realm. His marriage to Catherine of Aragon, however, had yielded only tragedy. Despite their union being one of political alliance and mutual respect, it was marred by sorrow and loss. Catherine, the daughter of the mighty Spanish monarchs, Ferdinand and Isabella, was a woman of unwavering faith and determination. She was a devout Catholic, and her piety was well known. Her strength and resilience were admired by many, but even she could not escape the cruel hand of fate. She had endured miscarriages and stillbirths. Each loss was a devastating blow, not just to her, but to the entire kingdom. The hopes of a nation rested on her shoulders, and with each tragedy, those hopes were dashed. The loss of each child was a blow to the royal couple, a stark reminder of their unfulfilled hopes. The empty royal nursery stood as a silent testament to their grief and the fragility of their dreams. The pressure mounted with each passing year. Time was not on their side, and the urgency of producing an heir grew more intense. Henry's once youthful face began to show the signs of stress and aging. A male heir was not just a personal desire, it was a political necessity. The stability of the kingdom depended on it. The Tudor court was acutely aware of the stakes, and discussions about succession were frequent and fraught with tension. Without a son, Henry's dynasty, his legacy, hung precariously in the balance. The thought of his lineage ending with him was a constant source of anxiety. The crown, a symbol of his power, also represented the heavy burden of his responsibilities. The weight of history pressed upon Henry. He was acutely aware of the turbulent past and the fragile nature of his reign. He spent hours poring over historical documents, seeking guidance and reassurance. England had not known a peaceful transfer of power from father to son in generations. The memory of past conflicts and the instability they brought was ever present in Henry's mind. The Wars of the Roses, a brutal civil war, were a chilling reminder of the fragility of the throne. The bloodshed and chaos of those years were a stark warning of what could happen if a clear line of succession was not established. Henry was determined to avoid a similar fate. He was resolute in his quest to secure a male heir, taking decisive actions and making difficult decisions to ensure the future of his dynasty. He yearned for a son, an undisputed heir, who would secure the Tudor line and bring stability to the realm. This desire drove many of his actions and decisions, shaping the course of his reign and the history of England. Catherine of Aragon, a devout Catholic, carried herself with the grace and dignity befitting a queen. Born into the powerful Spanish monarchy, she was the daughter of King Ferdinand II of Aragon and Queen Isabella I of Castile. From a young age, Catherine was groomed for greatness, her education and upbringing steeped in the traditions and expectations of royalty. She had been married to Arthur, Henry's elder brother, who tragically died shortly after their wedding. This union, though brief, was meant to solidify the alliance between England and Spain, a strategic move orchestrated by their parents. The death of Arthur left Catherine in a precarious position, a young widow in a foreign land. To secure the Anglo-Spanish alliance, a dispensation was granted by the Pope, allowing Catherine to marry Henry. This papal dispensation was a significant document, as it permitted the marriage despite the canonical impediment of affinity. The political implications were vast, ensuring that the bond between the two powerful nations remained intact. Their union was steeped in political strategy. The marriage of Catherine and Henry was not just a personal union, but a symbol of the alliance between England and Spain. It was a marriage that carried the weight of national interests and the hopes of two kingdoms. For years, Catherine had endured the whispers and judgments of the court. The Tudor court was a place of constant scrutiny, where every action and word was analysed. Catherine, with her foreign origins and strong Catholic faith, often found herself the subject of gossip and speculation. Her inability to produce a surviving male heir became a source of shame and vulnerability. Despite multiple pregnancies, only one child, Mary, survived infancy. This failure to provide a male heir was seen as a significant flaw, casting a shadow over her position as queen. Yet she remained steadfast in her faith. Catherine's devotion to her religion was unwavering. She spent countless hours in prayer, seeking solace and strength from her faith. Her piety was well known, and she often turned to the church for guidance and support. She believed that God would bless them with a son. Her hope and faith never wavered, even in the face of repeated disappointments. Catherine's belief in divine providence was a cornerstone of her character, providing her with the resilience to endure her trials. Her piety and resilience earned her the respect of some, but it did not lessen the pressure on Henry. The king, facing the demands of his court and the expectations of his subjects, found himself increasingly frustrated by the lack of a male heir. The respect Catherine garnered for her faith and strength did little to alleviate the growing tension. He began to question whether his marriage was, in fact, blessed by God. Henry's doubts were fueled by the pressures of his role as king and the need to secure the Tudor dynasty. The lack of a male heir was not just a personal disappointment, but a potential political crisis. The Tudor court was a viper's nest of ambition and intrigue. Rumors spread like wildfire. The courtiers, always eager to advance their own positions, whispered about the Queen's failures and the King's frustrations. The atmosphere was charged with tension and suspicion. Some whispered that Catherine was cursed. These rumors, though baseless, added to the sense of unease. The idea of a curse played into the superstitions of the time, further complicating the already fraught situation. Others suggested that Henry's own sins were to blame for their misfortune. The king's actions and decisions were scrutinized, with some believing that divine retribution was at play. This added a moral and religious dimension to the political and personal struggles. The king, a man accustomed to getting his own way, found himself trapped in a situation he could not control. Henry's frustration grew as he grappled with the limitations of his power. The inability to secure a male heir was a blow to his authority and his sense of destiny. His frustration grew, and with it, his doubts about his marriage. The king's internal conflict was mirrored in the strained relationship with Catherine. The once strong alliance between England and Spain, symbolized by their marriage, now seemed fragile and uncertain. Amidst the stifling atmosphere of the court, a new figure emerged, Anne Boleyn. She was not just another lady-in-waiting. She was a force of nature, a woman who would change the course of history. Unlike the other ladies-in-waiting, Anne possessed a sharp wit, a captivating presence, and an air of unconventionality. Her demeanor was a breath of fresh air in the otherwise rigid and predictable court. She was a woman who knew her worth and was not afraid to show it. She had spent time in the French court, where she had been exposed to humanist ideas and a more relaxed social scene. This experience had shaped her into a woman of sophistication and intellect. She was different. She was alluring. Her time in France had given her a unique perspective, one that set her apart from the other women at court, and she caught the eye of the king. Henry VIII, a man known for his many affairs, found himself inexplicably drawn to Anne. She was unlike any woman he had ever encountered. Henry, accustomed to the subservience of women, found himself drawn to Anne's intelligence and spirit. She challenged him in ways no one else dared. Their conversations were filled with wit and intellect, a stark contrast to the usual flattery he received. She was not easily swayed by his advances. Anne knew the power she held and was determined to use it to her advantage. She played the game of courtly love with skill and precision, always staying just out of reach. She refused to be just another mistress. Anne had her sights set on something much greater. She wanted to be queen, and she was willing to do whatever it took to achieve that goal. She demanded recognition, respect, and the crown itself. Anne was not content with being a mere consort. She wanted to be Henry's equal. Her ambition knew no bounds, and she was determined to see it realized. Henry, consumed by his infatuation, found himself promising her the world. He was willing to break with the Catholic Church, to defy the Pope, all in the name of his love for Anne. His obsession with her would lead to one of the most significant religious and political upheavals in English history. Anne's arrival at court sent shockwaves through the established order. The courtiers were divided, some admired her, while others saw her as a threat. Her presence disrupted the delicate balance of power, and the court was never the same again. Her intelligence and ambition were impossible to ignore. Anne was a woman ahead of her time, a trailblazer who refused to be confined by the limitations of her gender. She was a scholar, a thinker, and a strategist, always planning her next move. Catherine of Aragon, Henry's first wife, saw Anne as a direct threat to her position and her children's future. The nobles too were wary of Anne's influence over the king. By the early 1520s, King Henry VIII had had enough. His marriage to Catherine of Aragon was under immense strain. Despite numerous pregnancies, Catherine had only given Henry a single surviving child, Mary, leaving Henry without a male heir. This lack of a male successor, combined with his deepening infatuation with Anne Boleyn, led Henry to believe that his marriage was cursed by God. He began to seek an annulment, convinced that his union with Catherine was invalid due to her previous marriage to his brother Arthur. In 1527, Henry formally requested an annulment from the Pope, arguing that their marriage violated biblical laws. However, the Pope, under the political influence of Catherine's nephew, Emperor Charles V, refused to grant the annulment. Frustrated by the papal refusal and determined to marry Anne Boleyn, Henry took matters into his own hands. He initiated the English Reformation, breaking from the Roman Catholic Church and establishing the Church of England, with himself as its supreme head. This seismic shift allowed him to annul his marriage to Catherine without papal consent. In May 1533, the newly appointed Archbishop of Canterbury, Thomas Cranmer, declared Henry's marriage to Catherine null and void. Shortly thereafter, Henry married Anne Boleyn in a secret ceremony, later publicly recognized on June 1, 1533. Anne's coronation followed, and she was declared Queen Consort. The marriage marked a pivotal moment in English history, setting the stage for further religious and political upheaval, and leaving Henry hopeful that Anne would provide the much-desired male heir. The divorce and subsequent marriage to Anne Boleyn concluded a tumultuous chapter in Henry's life, cementing his legacy as a monarch who defied the most powerful religious institution of the time to fulfill his personal and dynastic ambitions. The next chapter would soon unfold, centered around Anne Boleyn and the dramatic consequences of Henry's relentless pursuit of a male heir.